Good morning. I'm here again for more tips. I know it's probably getting old for some of you. If, more than like 5 of you are watching. Let's see. The first one on my list where I had left off was be careful of public school extra commitments. And this can apply to homeschoolers too. Now, for full disclosure, my family is a homeschool family, but my husband and I were public schooled when we went to school. So I have a little bit of a double perspective here. Commitments meaning the extracurricular and things like that. If you get into too many of those, they can get super expensive. And back in my day, it really wasn't so bad. My husband and I were both in band, and that's how we knew each other and met. I was a flute player, he's a trumpet player. But so, I have band to thank for my husband. But in general, band didn't cost a ton of money for us. There was a little bit here and there. Of course, there was the initial instrument investment that our parents made. But in general, it really wasn't super expensive. I remember periodically my parents would have to give like a uniform rental allowance or something like that. And then just the cost, we might need for traveling with the band for competitions, things like that. But I hear that a lot of that stuff has gone way, way up if you're in public school, that the cost to participate in sports and various other activities is pretty high now. So if you do have kids in public school, I would say be very careful of the commitments you let them make. And again, this can apply to homeschoolers too, because I know some homeschoolers that are heavily involved in lots of lessons and just various things. Some still get involved with their local high schools and the sports and things like that, depending on their state and the laws. And in Ohio, that's kind of based on each district that you live in. Let me adjust the camera here. Sorry for that. But anyway, it can add up. So watch about those extracurricular activities for public school or homeschool. Rotate your entertainment subscriptions. So we have not had standard cable in a very, very long time. And of course, there's a lot of videos out there that's giving frugal tips, and they say to drop, your cable off. We all know that. But I would also suggest, in addition to that, if you're subscribing to a bunch of side services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Paramount Plus, there's others, I can't think of them all, but if you're subscribing, PureFlix, that's a good one. If you're subscribing to a lot, it can add up. So it's hard to watch them all at the same time, but I would say pick one or two and then maybe hold those for a little while and then rotate. You can't really do that with Amazon Prime. It's like either you have it or you don't, because you have it for a whole year. At least I don't think you can, unless they have a monthly option that I'm unaware of. But most of them you can do monthly, and that's totally fine. So if you hold it for a few months and then switch it off for something else, that way you're not blowing a ton on the little side subscriptions. Right now we are holding Great Courses. We use that for homeschool reasons. And we will probably keep that for a while. We've done it off and on a few different times, but right now my son's heavily using it. So I'd say we'll hold that. My husband temporarily has a Paramount Plus that he was watching something on, and I think they gave him like a discount another month. So we'll have that for a little longer. We're killing the Disney that, we had to watch some of the Star Wars stuff. Yeah, we're kind of mad at them. Let's see, what else was it? Netflix we killed quite a while ago. They made me mad, mocking Christ. I didn't want anything to do with them anymore. There's something else out there. Of course, we have our Amazon Prime because of shipments and stuff. I don't know. Amazon makes me mad too. I've so thought about dropping them, but anyway, none of these services are perfect. We have tried PureFlix before. I love the concept. We don't have it right now, but I have thought about trying it again. It's been a while when we tried it, it very first came out, but we'll see. We might pick that back up here at some point and put it in the rotation too, because I like that concept. But watch about getting too many of them and rotate a couple of them at a time, and that keeps the cost way down. And some of those are really rising fast too. Always have a dinner plan and a backup. So menu planning is a big deal. A lot of people will mention that. But even if you don't do a full menu plan, which I highly recommend, I struggle with sometimes getting it into, I tend to keep enough base ingredients here that even if I don't have a menu plan, it's not usually a giant deal. I can come up with a lot of meals. But even if you don't do that, if every morning you kind of set in your head, okay, this is what I'm making for dinner today, focus on today, get that item laid out early, and that way it can go ahead and defrost. If you are a fridge defroster only, then you probably need to act the day before. But if you can go ahead and get your item laid on out, and then you know that you have that item ready to go, because that's one of the biggest hindrances for me, is not having my meat defrosted and ready to go at dinner time, because that will delay dinner or cause me to have to swizzle to something else so often. So that is a really good thing to have, but also have a backup. Get your contingency plan B in there too. I've been trying, and it's been very helpful. Every grocery run, I make sure I have 1 to 2 backup meals in my fridge that either don't need defrosting, something like kielbasa. It's a pre-cooked meat that really just doesn't need much. It can kind of live in the fridge for a very long time, and I can have it in there, and I know that that's backup plan if for some reason my primary dinner plan fails, that I've got something. Salmon is a good one to have for that too, meaning canned salmon. Corned beef hash is something I use as a backup, sometimes hot dogs, but have some kind of a backup meal plan apart from your primary. That way, if all else fails, it's fast and it's easy. And if possible, having some freezer backups too. Well, I think we already talked about that though. Let's see, be on kids about waste and reclosing packages. I suppose this could apply to adults too, if you are a family that does that. I highly recommend make sure you have plenty of clips around. Right now we have a lot of extra clothespins because, as we talked about, we got the clothesline out here. And simple wooden clothespins are probably one of the cheapest clips you can use. Binder clips work too. Generally buying the specialized clips for actual chips and things like that, they tend to kind of cost a little bit more per clip, but a basic pack of wooden clothespins is usually $1 to $2 and you get like 100 of them in it. So I would say go with that. And that simple thing can save I don't know how many chips and cereal bags and many other things if they get reclosed. Make it a point to teach your kids how to reclose it properly, even with the clip, because there for a while that was a problem I was having with my youngest. She would kind of half close and then half clip, and it's just like, you might as well not even bother. But she's gotten it down now. She's rolling them up, getting tight, getting the air out of a package and clipping. But simple things like that, making sure all the containers in the fridge are reclosed and always put back. That's where I get in trouble. My squirrel brain will sometimes forget to put something back into the fridge. I did that the other day with some taco meat and was kicking myself because I like myself some taco meat. I'm like, I left that out overnight. What a loss. Thankfully, it wasn't a whole lot left in the container, but make sure you're reclosing your containers and you have plenty of containers and clips on hand to get that done. Because if they're not handy, your family won't do it. If they're hidden away in some drawer in dark recesses, never to be hardly seen again, they won't be seen again. Make sure it's out and available. Next, let's see, we've done that. Fabrics. This one is more for people like me who also sew. It could be used for other people who don't, especially if you have some no-sew projects. But if you're trying to find fabric, you probably, if you've ever looked at a fabric store, you're like, oh my, that's much more expensive than I ever thought it was. Fabric can be expensive, shockingly so sometimes, but one of the best ways to get it really cheap, it depends on what you're doing, what you need it for. But go to a thrift store and look at things like the linen area, sheets, bedding, tablecloths, especially some of those old school polyester tablecloths. They have a lot of good uses and applications, but my favorite is sheets, because especially if you can get cotton sheet, it has just a multitude of uses. Basic plain Jane cotton, and that stuff is got a really tight weave, and it can wear like iron. It is great for making things like pantalettes, nightgowns, slips, various household things. You can even do curtains and stuff. Sometimes you can find a really pristine, brand new, pretty floral sheet and it'd make a beautiful curtain. It depends on what you find. When it comes to sheets on my bed, I absolutely despise microfiber, but I will sometimes buy them for other purposes if it's not something I have to wear on my body. It could be, like a good curtain. Obviously, you cut off the edges and do things to them to make them look nicer, but it's ultimately fabric and it can be very, very useful. But don't discount various other things. Something I'd like to find more of is silks. Some people will find silk blouses. I never find them, but and that's a good way to get a hold of a little bit of silk if you need it for something. But the point is don't view your thrift store just like a regular thrift store. View it as a fabric store, and you will be surprised at some of the really cool treasures that you may be able to repurpose. Because if you're just paying $1 for a top and you're like, that t-shirt, I would never normally think of that for what it is, but for the cotton knit that it contains, and I need it for this little particular project, it's perfect and much cheaper, especially if you can hit oh my word, was that necessary, Laura? Cats came through. I don't know if you could hear that on the mic, but sometimes they come through like a little thundering herd. They think they're Marshall. Some of you might get that. I don't know. Anyway, thrift store is a fabric store. I know some people are going to be grossed out by that one too, but cheap sewing machine pays for itself. Absolutely. I don't know if you sew, but again, even if you don't have a sewing machine, a basic plain Jane cheap Brother or Singer from Walmart or some store can totally pay for itself in short time. You can get those for less than $100. At least the last I look, out of my coffee, Tiggy. I would frequently see them for like $89, something like that. They don't have a lot of stitches, but that's okay. It's totally fine. You really don't need a lot of stitches. My Bernina has quite a few, but I rarely use the oddball stitches. The only thing that I think can be worth upgrading machine for is the automatic buttonhole. I love that thing, but a lot of basic machines have what you call a 4-step buttonhole, and it's fine. It is totally easy to learn to use, and honestly, all the extra oddball stitches just don't come in handy that often, but the machine itself does, because if you can stitch your own curtains, you can make repairs on your clothes. Maybe you can make, if you're someone who likes dresses and skirts, you could make simple skirts very easily. One of the easiest things you can ever make is a skirt. If it's a basic elastic waist straight skirt, easy peasy lemon squeezy. But that sewing machine will totally pay for itself. Just like other tools, I think tools are a good investment. Consider how products are packaged when you buy them and how you might reuse them for other things. So I've already mentioned in another video, and if you haven't seen those videos, I totally suggest you watch them, that sometimes I will save packaging. Not always. I don't try to hoard things or whatever, but if I think there is a legit good purpose. For example, I didn't mean to show it here, but I'll show you. Oop, there's still a screw in it where my husband was taking apart a computer. This meat tray, plain Jane meat tray. This one was from Aldi and it had burger in it, but it's a very heavy plastic. And behind me, I need trays of very heavy plastic. So right now, that will be a very good extra plant tray to catch strips and things like that. You do clean it out, you do bleach it just to make sure you don't have any baddies in there. But when you buy something, consider its packaging, because there's been quite a few times, especially with things like cat litter, I may think, oh, I really need an extra bucket for something. I wouldn't use that for food grade, by the way, but I need an extra bucket for something, so I'll buy this litter that's in a bucket. That way it may cost me $1 or so more, but it's still less than buying the actual bucket. So it just depends on what you're after. I try not to, I hate that a lot of the litters come in the plastic jugs because I get too many of them, but I've been recently cutting them down for things like plant labels. They're really good plant labels. If you cut the tops off of the pour jug, they can be a planter, which is what I just sat in my garage yesterday and cut down, I don't know, 10 or more of those things. The top part is going to be waste, but then the bottom is going to be like a planter. The edges will be a little funky, but I need to go through and clean those up with a scissor. But in general, find purposes for stuff. My preference is to find ones that don't have to sit in a landfill for forever. But if I am buying that plastic or that packaging, I think, okay, what can I reuse it for to be a little more friendly to the environment? I am not what you call an environmentalist, but in the same turn, I do think it's important that we try to do our best there. It's just, I don't know, the right thing to do, right? So dishwasher stuff, I try to think, okay, I have the choice between this bottle and this gel or this powder. I feel like they work about the same, so I'm going to go ahead and get the ones that in the box that will go ahead and degrade, because I don't have a purpose for this other thing. I've yet to find a good purpose for the dishwasher gel bottles, so I don't really like to buy them. I prefer the boxes if I can. So it just depends on price. I have my limits. If something is significantly more, I usually don't spring for it, and I'd rather throw the thing away, but I don't like to throw all that away. So if possible, find packaging that's reusable and think about that ahead of time. What am I going to do with this when it's empty? Don't drink calories monetary for like your coffee, your tea, your water and stuff like that. A lot of people will, it seems like from what I see on TV, I don't understand it, but a lot of people seems like spend lots of money on things like Starbucks, coffees, of course soda. That used to be a huge one in this house. It just absolutely ginormous expense we had. My husband used to drink a lot of it, and I would drink some in the past, but I don't drink that at all anymore. I can't with the diabetes. But if you're drinking a lot of calories, you're also spending a lot of money. So it's both a diet tip and a frugal tip. Very, very rarely would you be drinking a ton of this stuff and it not be costing you, with the exception of obviously coffee isn't very expensive if you're home making a pot of it. But you can make it expensive if you're buying a bunch of specialty coffee or specialty things to go with it and whatnot. But try to minimize how much you're drinking calories. We have a thing for the little True Lemon packets. Those are delicious, and we do have a lot of them here. But ultimately, if you drink that all of the time, you are spending money. Water is usually free unless you're drinking bottled, which hopefully you're not doing that unless you absolutely need to and have no other choice. Generally water is free, so keep that in mind. Limit how much you're drinking, calories that are not necessary. One of the problems I freely admit we have in this household is milk. My kids, my husband, I'm really not supposed to drink it because of keto, though when I fall off my wagon I tend to drink it because I really like it. But milk it's good. It does have good things in it for you, but too much of it's really not good for your body, and it really has been going up lately in the price. So watch about drinking calories, because the costs can totally add up. If you really just only drink water, that is a lot of quite a few people's grocery budgets right there. If they're not buying, Lord forbid, coffee. So I'm still buying coffee. But if they're not buying any coffee, they're not buying a bunch of powdered drinks, they're not buying soda, and maybe they cut back on the milk and stuff, it's just a big debt. I know in my grocery budget, the milk is sometimes a surprising amount. I keep telling the kids we gotta watch this. It's not just about cost, it's about your health, because if they drink too much milk, then they're not taking in the other foods and calories and nutrition that their body truly needs. Because it's like a substitute meal of sort. They'll have a big drink or glass of that, and then maybe they don't want as much dinner. That's not a good swap. So it just depends on what you're doing. I think some milk is perfectly fine for you, but too much is not such a good thing. Not when you're just mainlining it, because it feels like sometimes in this household that we struggle with that. Okay, so I sort of touched on this one, but learn new skills, build, plumbing, etc., electrical. excuse me, I talked about this in regards to tools and making a tool investment that it's worth it, they pay for themselves. But in general, what absolutely will pay for itself every time is your skills, because your skills that you learn are free for the most part, depending on how you go about learning them. But even if you do pay for an actual class or official training, you're still probably going to have that pay for itself. But right now, YouTube is a massive resource and very free. So learn as many skills as you can. I was telling you in the previous video, I had rebuilt the front porch steps. I've done a lot of plumbing in the house, from replacing the water hose spigots with frost-free ones last year. Pulled out some old polybutylene pipe that was not viable anymore. Had to replace the plumbing underneath my sink. Had to replace the sink. It was about to crack and leak. The faucets, have had to change several faucets. Electrical is something I need to do because of our dryer problem that I mentioned before. I'm probably not going to do a ton of that. I'm going to get an electrician's help with the dryer, since it's the 220, 240 line. But I have a lot of the regular outlets that need replaced, so I will be doing that. Our doorbell button needs replaced. I'll be doing that. Our ceiling fan in our bedroom, for some reason we've lost the stupid remote to, driving me nuts. I really wish that would turn up, but it's been a month and a half it's been missing. I think the cat batted it off into the trash can, and I think it's gotten thrown away. So we bought a replacement one, and that means you have to take the receiver out of the fan, and so you have to disconnect power and all of that fun stuff and take the receiver out and put a new one in. So that's another project. But everything that you learn to do is that much that you're not paying to have done, and there's a lot of satisfaction in getting those skills done. Don't be terrified to do it, because those skills, I can't emphasize enough how much that has saved us over the years, trying to learn to deal with and fix things ourselves. And the personal satisfaction is amazing when you try and fix something. And even if you're a girl, which I know most of you who watch my channel are, don't be afraid of it. You know, you can do it. You can totally do it. You may need help with it, and that's fine. There's no shame in asking for help, but try to learn what you can and open yourself up to the idea of fixing things that maybe only guys might normally fix. I have no issue with that, and I find it fun. Turn off stuff. Know your usage. That's like the most obvious nose on your face tip ever, right? Turn things off if you're not in the room. Some things are exception, like my plant lights behind me. Those have to stay on all day for a very long time. But most things in general can be shut off. And, you know, good luck with that. I know it's a tip, but it's not easy to live by, especially when you have youngins. I remind them often, but I'm pretty sure every time I walk by the bathroom on this first floor, that bathroom light's on. But I keep trying, I keep shutting it off, and I keep reminding them, turn this off, turn the lights off. Their dad is on them religiously about getting the computers shut down, because he's the one who builds those, and he doesn't want any extra wear and tear on the components. But, you know, get the things shut off, especially at night when you go to bed. If you're not going to be in the room for a very long time, shut the lights off, shut every little thing off that doesn't need to be, because it does add up. Totally, again, still working on that in this house. I don't think we do a good job at it, to be honest with you, but we're working on it. Yeah, we got issues there. Vitamins is something that I think probably pays off and can be a frugal tip. Yeah, they are an investment, but I think in general, if they help prevent problems and hospitalizations or various sicknesses in your body, I think that's worth it. There's been some oddball things we have found, like we've had a couple visits in the past, and hopefully my husband doesn't mind me telling this, but where he had some chest pains, and we had him at the hospital, and you know, he tested fine and all that years ago. Well, we've come to find out over the years, when he takes magnesium, he doesn't get that. I think what it is he gets muscle spasms, because if you don't have enough magnesium or electrolytes, your muscles will charley horse. Well, and that can simulate other things. But we figured out that went away, and then there was a couple times, I don't know, it's been maybe 5 years ago. There was just a fluke that we kind of figured it out, where he thought, I'm starting to have some funny feelings there. By chance, he just happened to take the daily vitamins, and it all went away. And eventually we tied it. Some of those pains that he were having were more muscular, not on the inside, but just the muscles. And those Charlie horses can simulate some nasty things. So that alone, how much more simple is that? Now, obviously, you have to be careful. You have to also be aware of the other symptoms. I'm more aware of some of those other heart attack symptoms than I used to be. But I suggest reading up on the symptoms of the serious, so you really do know when to call. At the time, as we were young and we didn't know that he was not at all meeting the other symptoms, to call for that. But anyway, those vitamins can help you out, and they can kind of help eliminate some little side symptoms, is what we have found. I have found vitamin C extremely helpful in fighting things. It is not uncommon for me to feel like I'm coming down with something, take extra vitamin C, and then do that for several days in a row, and then I'm feeling tons better, and I've kind of bypassed the bug. It depends on what it is. But in general, if I do get sick, I tend to get sick pretty hard, and I feel like the vitamin C lessens that and helps it be a little bit better. It helped me with a particularly large virus that shall not be named because YouTube hates it, but at least it hates people mentioning them. But vitamin C, I feel like, was strongly helpful on there. I feel like I would have been in the hospital without it. But that's my opinion, and it's not medical advice, but I would say look into that, research that, consider taking certain things. Some of the things I take a B complex, I take a vitamin D 5,000 to 10,000 depending on what we have available. I take a multi, because sometimes I need some iron from like a women's multi. Magnesium, I prefer magnesium malate or magnesium glycinate because they don't keep you married to the toilet. And then I take a vitamin C that's about 1,000 milligrams every day. So that's my little vitamin payload. Sometimes I do throw in kelp because of thyroid, because I do not eat seaweed. I hate seafood. I hate seafood. I don't like it. There's a few things I might consider, but we do not regularly have seafood as part of our diet. About the only fish we ever really eat is salmon and sometimes tuna. And my husband will not even eat the tuna. So we both pop in kelp here and there to kind of help with some of the iodine from that, and it does help with thyroid. So in general, that's mostly what I've been taking. I took some MSM, and that kind of helped some other issues, but I haven't done that one in a while. It's kind of a lot. I feel like it's a lot, but as one of my friends used to tell me, would you rather have the vitamins or would you rather have the prescriptions? So I prefer the vitamins. They're much cheaper in the long run, and I think are a frugal tip. Okay, if you are an eyeglasses wearer, we all in this house have a prescription for eyeglasses, though I admit I hardly wear them. I only wear them when I absolutely have to for reading, or my eyes are having an off day, because my eyes have on days and they have off days. My daughter has gotten to where she hardly wears hers. Her prescription's gotten very light. My husband doesn't have much choice anymore, and my son definitely doesn't have a choice. He has a very strong eyeglasses prescription. He's very farsighted. But that, for a while, was adding up with, excuse me, I have to itch, a lot of eyeglasses wipes. Those add up a lot, and they are handy to have. I do like them for my purse, but a spray bottle of alcohol and a tissue that does not have any lotions or anything on it are a really good substitute. The little washable microfiber cloths aren't bad as long as you're not washing them in fabric softener or something like that. But those things kind of come out a lot cheaper than buying bunches of eyeglasses wipes and using them every day or multiple times a day. When I do wear my glasses, I like them super, super clean. I don't like to see any fuzzes or any blurs or spotches. It just drives me crazy. They drive me crazy sitting on my face. I feel claustrophobic with it. But in general, those little eyeglasses wipes add up. The best place I've found to buy them is about Sam's, so we buy them, but we try to use a whole lot less of them by using the spray bottle in between. to charge. I have no idea what I meant with that tip. I'm not even sure what I was trying to think there. Here is a big tip, and it's probably going to be my last one for the day. Use a separate bank account for food. We actually separate our bank accounts into a lot of different categories. We find it super, super helpful. Like, I have a bank account that's just for homeschool. I have a bank account that's for business purposes like Etsy and sewing and things like that. We have a bank account that's just for food expenses and household expenses. We do combine, like in our food budget, if we are buying things like toilet paper or any disposables, which I try not to buy a lot of disposables, but if we are buying them, they kind of come out of that same household bucket. But having that household bucket and food account is very, very useful. One, it lets you see what you're actually spending. Are you overspending, or are you doing really, really good? And yeah, maybe you have a little extra to eat out that week. It really can be eye-opening to have that. What my husband does, excuse me, I have got to get a drink of coffee. And the throat's getting dry. What my husband does is, when he gets paid every 2 weeks, he has his paycheck split off into these various accounts. Our main bank account, where most of our bills are paid, gets some of it. We have an account set up for our car, and again, the homeschool account. My account doesn't really get anything from his pay. That's like if I make Etsy sales and stuff like that, it will go in there. And then a lot of his pay, of course, will come into our food and household account. And every time that pay happens, that automatically gets going into those buckets. But having those individual buckets, I totally recommend multiple checking accounts. Now, the exception where I don't is if you do not have the ability to have a free account somewhere or run multiple accounts, then keep it in one, because I don't want you to have extra fees for that. We have USAA, where my husband was military. I could have gotten it other ways. My dad was military. I got brothers in the military. So many of my family are military. But in general, USAA is a good one because they don't charge you any fees for having the accounts. And that's a blessing. And that lets us have all kinds of buckets. We have some there. We also do use other banks too. We have a U.S. bank account, and there's an oddball credit union we've talked about opening a PNC account. So it just depends, but I like having buckets in different places, but I like having them free. U.S. Bank gives us a free one too. They don't normally for everybody, but it's the veteran status my husband has, so that gets us a free account. But use the different accounts if you're able to and get them free. I've heard that you can set up some accounts with some various online banks. I know nothing about that. Strongly recommend that you research very well anything like that you do. Make sure it's a legit organization. But in general, multiple bank accounts is extremely helpful for budgeting and seeing what you have. The negative of doing that is you need to always have a little bit of what we call the kitty in every account. You need to have that minimum amount that you're always keeping in there. So you have to have enough to fund your bucket initially. That way you never take your account below a certain level. But if you can do that, it's really, really helpful to have it all divided out, and it's just a kind of a passive way to budget, but it's super helpful. Somebody asked there recently in a group, it's like, oh, I don't even know how much I'm spending on homeschool in a year, and I'm like, that one's really easy for me because we have that account. I can tell you right off what we are spending every year on homeschool. So anyway, that can really help you passively figure out your budget. So that is my last tip for the day. There will still be at least another video coming looking at my list of tips here. So again, if you have tips, please feel free to leave them. So far, I'm not hardly getting anybody commenting on these. Part of that, I think, is the length of the video. The other part is people who are on my channel for head covering reasons, not for these tips. And ultimately, I'm pretty sure YouTube is downgrading my videos pretty strongly lately. I don't really know why. I'm not going to make speculations. It is what it is. But if you are willing to like the video, subscribe if you're not, and comment, that is very, very helpful for the algorithm, and I thank you for it. I hope you all have a very blessed day.